welcome you all to Western. I'm Laura Fredrick. I am the Counseling Program Coordinator and Center for Women Team Leader. And just a couple logistical things first. Hopefully you all picked up the blue handout, the evaluation form. You'll want to fill this out at the end and turn it in at the front table. Make sure to sign out and put the time that you're signing out, and then you can pick up your certificate. We have a certificate for everyone, even if you're not collecting continuing education. And then also, we have a couple flyers we wanted to make you aware. In September, we're hosting a one-day writers conference. And this is for anyone who's looking to further a writing project, whether it's a blog or a work of nonfiction or fiction. Jan Kern will be leading that. She's been on the team for the Mount Hermon Writers Conference for years, is published and has been an editor for other people, and then she's going to be bringing in a few local folks as well. So this is in line with one of Western's goals to equip the local church and look at where are their gaps. There are great conferences in existence in Sacramento, but then there are other things like writers' conferences where local folks end up driving hours away, and we have enough talent here. So let's, look at how can we bring people in-house and connect them with other local folks. And then in November, Kate Piper is going to be leading a continuing ed workshop on teen therapy. So walking the tightrope of teen therapy. And this should be good even for folks who are working with adolescents in church settings. And then the last note, most of you know, hopefully, we've dropped our audit price. So you can now audit a 2-unit class for only $150, which is a screaming deal for graduate level courses. So keep that in mind. Most of the classes are open to audit, and if you have any questions about that, you can contact me. Now let's get on to the fun of the morning. So we are so grateful that Kim published a book so that we would all have an excuse to celebrate her, right? Isn't that why we're here? This is really a time of gathering together and acknowledging the impact that Kim has had on the therapy community, on the church community here in our area. So Bev will be doing the intro, but I just wanted to open with a little note on Kim's impact on my life. So I came into Western in 2003 and had this notion that strong women don't show emotion. And then God did this crazy thing like he does in all of our lives, right? Where we have in our mind, this is how it's going to be, and then he says, hey, guess what? I'm actually going to do the direct opposite with you. And so all of a sudden, I was just crying all the time. I would get up, I'd hold a mic, and it always happened in front of people. As soon as I had a microphone in my hand, I would start crying, and I was freaking out and didn't know what this meant. And then I met Kim and through Western, and she gave me permission to be authentic and taught me that being authentic, one aspect of that is God has given us this wide range of emotion. It's okay to express anger, it's okay to express sadness, and that even our deep joy, sometimes tears well up out of that. And that often when you connect in with like a holy ground moment, a Holy Spirit moment, tears come out because it's deeper than words can express. And so it's because of Kim that I felt, wow, I can actually continue to walk forward in this journey rather than be afraid of it. And she taught me how to be a true wounded healer, which is something that we strive for in the therapy community, right? Acknowledging that we're all cracked pots, and it's not to hide the cracks or try to work around them, but God has this miraculous ability to actually perform beauty through that. And it's because of Kim that I was able to do the soul care ministry over at Bridgeway and look at how can we as a church community do that same thing, where rather than trying to put on a face we can actually be real with each other about the highs and lows and the broken spaces and look at inviting God to work through those things. So that is why when we heard about this book, that's my piece of why Bev and I jumped at the chance to have a little party for Kim.
I can't think that
the introduction.
You know, when I came to the area 11 years ago, I invited a group of Christian clinicians to meet with me and talk about the future of William Jutsup. And Kim was part of that group. I don't know if you even remember.
Oh, I do remember.
You remember that, yeah. But, you know, in all of the confusion of us coming, basically, you know, the group was asking me, well, what is it you need from us? And I said, Bev needs friends. And they all laughed, but that was the truth. And Kim became a special friend exactly 11 years ago, last month. Yeah. And she helped establish the program over there. We've been colleagues here at Western for years and years. And I had her daughter in our program, and we became even closer during that time. And so I just count her a special friend. I would doubt that there's many people in this room, and I won't ask for hands, but many people in this room who don't know Kim or who don't consider her a special friend. She is just very well known. In fact, I consider her, and I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I consider her the matriarch of Christian counseling in this room. I don't think I've ever said that in front of her, but I say it to all kinds of people. If you want to know anything about what's going on in the world around here, call Kim. She's an expert marketer. She's an expert at so many things. She's a wonderful teacher. Her teacher evals are stellar constantly. And now she's an author. What do you know? So I don't think there's anything that Kim can't do. And so we're really glad to have you. You know, when I heard about her cancer diagnosis, I think none of us had any idea where that would lead to. But the truth of the matter is the wisdom that she shares in her book, she's having to live out right now. And that's a very powerful testimony. So, yeah.
Thank you. All right, this is for later. Thanks, you guys. This is so fun. Oh, gosh. So good to see all of you. I have Kleenex just in case. Well, it's just a delight to be here, and I was so excited when...
Kim, I just want to say,
Yeah.
we have tissue too.
Yeah, if we need. I mean, I'm not planning to make you all cry, but you know what? It could happen, right, Laura? At any point, it could just happen. So, but it's just such a pleasure to be here because I've been working on the whole self-compassion thing for a long time, and started writing the book. And I have kind of my story at the very end of the handout. You can read later. It's kind of long. I thought I'm not going to go through the whole thing now. But I do talk about kind of what has happened with how the book came about, and then my illness, and then my next illness, and what's going on there. And so it's a long story. But the whole idea that I could come and pass on, choke up. Like how I use self-compassion with clients, and to know that I could pass that on to you guys, and that then you could pass it on. It's so meaningful to me. So because my ability to do things has reduced so much, and I can't teach here anymore, and I had to close my practice, and so the idea that I could pass that on to all of you, and that the parts that make sense to you, the parts that fit you, that you can pass that on is like super meaningful to me. So thank you all for being here, and I hope I've gotten to see some of you already, but if I haven't gotten to see you, I'd like to greet you afterwards and all of that. So thanks so much. And thank you for Bev and Laura and Jacob and all the people at Western who put a lot of effort in, and then there's all these students and alums who are here to set up and to do
food and to do everything, and then I have my own like personal team. All right, I have everybody's name. So I just want to say, so this student and volunteers like Anna and Elise and Carol and Peter joining the camera, and Ben and Kalisha and Maurice and Trinity, who, and probably there's others maybe who just helped just because you wanted to, who are helping, and then my own team of Gretchen and Holly and oh gosh, help me, Gretchen and Holly and Betty. Who am I forgetting? Katie's right there. You know, my good friends who came to sell books and do role plays and to take pictures, and Betty's my personal photographer. And anyway, I just so appreciate all of you for being here. At the very brief about my story is I was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago. It's 2 years right now. And I went through all this treatment of chemo and radiation, and I had some surgery, and I decided to be a really good friend to myself during that time and to be compassionate with myself. But I honestly, I just thought I would do like I always do, honestly, which is I'm just powering through this baby, okay? You know, and it was really hard. I mean, it was like harder than I could have ever even imagined. But you know, at the end, I'm gonna be done. Like, you know, it'll be done. And so, you know, the day I finished radiation, I was so excited, and I only had 4 days. And then I started having breathing problems. And that's turned into a very serious disease that there's no cure for. And so that's been really hard to deal with. And there's a lot more details in my story that I have to back. But I was determined after this whole period of time where you have to get used to this, like what is even happening, and I have to use oxygen, like what the heck? And like I argued with the doctor and told him I wasn't going to do it because I was only 57 and I was not going to push a cart around like someone who was 80. And so like he would have to come up with another option because I wasn't going to do that. And he was like looking. And he said, well, they can put him in a backpack. I said, well, I would consider that. So anyway, I got my backpack. I had to pay for it. This Kaiser wouldn't pay for my oxygen. He would consider it essential, if you can believe it. That's a whole other story. So anyway, just a whole road, and then adjusting to, okay, this is like not going to get better. In fact, it's going to get worse. And so what do I have to do? You know, what do I have to do with my practice, and how am I going to adjust my life? And so it's been a very long process. Probably I was in turmoil and just confusion, because you're just trying to, you guys know, when anything big changes, you're like, I don't know what's happening. Like, I don't even, what? And so for quite a long time, but then the last 3 months especially have been better. And so, which is perfectly coincided with my book being released. Thank you, God. And so then I just kind of decided, you know, I could still, for whatever time period, I can still sit and teach, and I can sit with my oxygen machine around the corner, so it's not so noisy, and I'd like to do as much as I can, as long as I can. And so Western is being very nice to videotape this, because I'm basically having everything I'm doing videotaped, so I can put it on YouTube and be able to share it with other people. So anyway, I'm delighted to be here, and especially delighted to be here at Western. I taught here for 15 years, loved every minute of it, cried and cried. Some of you were at my last group therapy class where I told people I was retiring. Cried and cried and cried and cried because I didn't want to, but I actually had retired, and not because of illness, but because honestly, I taught night classes for 15 years and I was tired. Like, it was just like the students complain about coming and having to come, but then they get to graduate and move on. I kept coming and teaching and grading papers. So, but I mean, it was God's providence, because right that next year this happened. So anyway, but I just love Western. It's just a great place. Teaches, equips pastors at MFT so well. And so it's just a delight to be here. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at a new way or a different way of interacting with yourself, which I call self-compassion. And we're going to look at it in detail. But I thought, I mean, some of you know already some of it, some of you don't. And so I thought what I would do is on the handout, honestly, I just have a bunch of stuff written down about what self-compassion is, and I'm just going to go over it. And then as we get a little farther, then I'm going to actually do 2 role plays with 2 brave souls. My friend Katie and Laura are going to come up and do role plays, so I can demonstrate for you the 2 ways that I have developed to use in therapy to use self-compassion with clients. And then I hope that that will be of use to you or help. And, my guess is you'll come up with your own ways. I'm going to show you what I do, but then, each therapist is unique, each client is unique, and, we all tweak things specifically for the purpose of who we're working with. So hopefully that will, do some ideas. In fact, you can tell me, I'm using it this way, that would be great. So that's kind of what today is. So let me go ahead and start with, what is self-compassion? What does that actually mean? How is it different from self-esteem? I've had a lot of people ask me that question, and I just wanted to preface, I've been very fortunate because I'm with a very wonderful publisher, which is Revell, which is a division of Baker Books, and they are amazing. Oh my gosh, the stuff they do for you, it's incredible. And they've set up a lot of radio interviews and all kinds of things. So I've done 5 radio interviews, so I have another one on Monday and a couple more. And I have them all on my website. And but I've learned so much from those. I was terrified for the first one, I have to just tell you. I was terrified because I'm good at, I'm fine with speaking, but I was so afraid they were going to ask me some Bible questions about it that I couldn't answer. I'd be like, well, I don't know, Jesus loves us. I mean, I didn't know. Because I have some biblical basis, but I thought, what about all the other ones, And so luckily I just have to say, I was going to say this later, but since it's here, being married to a Bible answer man, literally, I could ask him anything. Oh, well, that's our, I'm like, what? How do you know that? And he helped me prepare, and he said, okay, these are the 5 things. So if someone wants to nail you with this concept, here are the 5 things they're going to ask you. I was like, thank you. And so I sit at home at a big table, and I do the interviews except for one of them, I went to the fish, but the other ones I just do on the phone. And I have all these papers and they're numbered. And if they ask me this awful question, I can pull it out. Now I'm not as nervous because they all ask the same one. So I'm going to be talking just a little bit about that later too. But I've learned a lot about what people are wondering about. And so it's actually helped me a lot. And so one of the things that came up is, well, how is self-compassion different from self-esteem? So what I'm going to do is just talk about some basic, they're all different kinds of ways of describing self-compassion. And as you're here to learn, but I also, as you listen from your heart. Like, what would it be like to treat yourself in these ways? Just you, okay? So, for instance, the first one is self-compassion is the idea that we can be kind to ourselves when we fail and treat ourselves with the same caring support that we would give someone else who is struggling. Someone we know, a friend, a client, that we would actually treat ourselves with that kind of caring support, okay? And out of self-compassion flows self-care and also protection from harm. So taking care of yourself, but also protecting yourself from harm. I believe that self-compassion is a reflection of how God sees us and how He treats us. Because He's an overflowing source of love and compassion and kindness and forgiveness and all of the things, all are all characteristics of Him. And I really do believe that He wants us to treat ourselves in the same way that He sees us, the same way that He treats us, rather than having a bully inside that's beating you up all the time. And then this one I like a lot is self-compassion is a balance of truth. Like, for instance, saying, yeah, I made a mistake. So somebody brings something up to you, yeah, I did make a mistake. And I'll address it directly. With grace, I have worth and value, and I'll address whatever that is, whatever that mistake was, whatever that sin was, whatever that regret was, I'll address it directly. And actually having them at the same time. That's actually the key, is treating yourself with both grace and truth, okay? Not just one or the other, which is our temptation. Either truth, we just beat ourselves up, or grace, like, well, these things happen and, whatever. It's like, no, to do both, to have grace and truth towards yourself. And so what you do is you acknowledge what happened without either minimizing it, so making it less than, or maybe going, oh, it's just the worst thing in the world, I could never overcome this, there's not forgiveness for that, and have compassion about whatever's happened. And so what happens is self-compassion helps us handle our humanness. all right? We're cracked pots, like Laura said, all right? We're all, like, that's no big surprise. Like, that's how it is, you know? He knows that. He accepts that. And he's probably thinking, why do you guys have trouble with that? Like, I came and died because you guys are a mess. And so, like, why do you have trouble with that, you know? And it's like, he's perfectly fine with that. And he wants us to come to him and have us, and help us, of course. But it helps us deal with our humanness and situations that we're in with empathy and concern and kindness. So I just wrote down, somebody who practices self-compassion might say something to themselves like, regarding goof up or sin or regret. Yes, I wish I'd acted differently. I really do. I could go back and change that. I would do it. But I'm using this experience for good in order to grow and learn. I can grant myself grace while I'm still doing what's necessary to right the situation. I'm not perfect and I don't need to be. I'm lovable and acceptable even when I make mistakes. So again, you're having both together. You're not being out of balance. You're not splitting, really. You're not just going to one or the other, which is what most people do. Now, how is self-compassion different from self-esteem? Well, it is different. Self-esteem is actually more about assessing yourself in a more positive light compared to somebody else, okay? Which can lead, doesn't always, but can lead to narcissism, which is, you know, being more special than others, better than others. Self-compassion is actually very different. It's treating yourself in a gentle way as you relate to ourselves, both when we're struggling and when more things are going well. It doesn't have to just be about struggling. With kindness, caring, empathy, understanding, treating yourself as you would treat a friend who's struggling, struggling or like learning something new, or is confused, or doesn't know what's happening, or is going through a change. It's treating yourself with that kind of kindness. So it isn't about, you know, assessing yourself as more important than other people. It's just about the way you treat yourself with kindness. Okay? Well, there's a lot of research. So to write the book, I did, you know, a lot of research, and so the benefits. Oh, and I did want to say one thing. The reason that I wrote it, honestly, was I had zero interest in writing it. Zero. I was busy. I had a full practice. I was teaching. I don't need something else to do. And honestly, all of us at different times, people say, you should write a book about that. I mean, therapists get that all the time. If you haven't, you will. And I honestly, I would think, like, seriously, what do I have to say that someone hasn't said about parenting? I mean, what do I have? I mean, I know we all say things in a unique way, but just for me to put that effort into it, what do I have to say that someone else has said about parenting? Nothing. You know, maybe I'd say it in a different way. But when I did the research, I actually found out that there was nothing from a faith perspective written about self-compassion. Not one thing. Nothing. And I was like, what the heck? How is that possible? I mean, if anyone should write about self-compassion, it would be Christians. Because, you know, we can have compassion. He loves us. He has compassion to us. We can have it. We can have it to ourselves or to give it to others. I mean, I just couldn't even believe it. And so then all of a sudden I was like, well, maybe there's something I can say that can be, you know. And then the other part was that God has just been bugging me, basically just tapping right here, not the shoulder, the shoulder. And really the same message over and over. You need to write it down. You need to write it down. I was like, I don't want to write it down. It's a lot of work. But anyway, there's more to the story, but you can read about it later. But eventually I was like, okay, well, I actually have something you need to contribute. Okay. So, so there's a lot of written about self-compassion, but not from a faith perspective. A lot of research on self-compassion, but not from a faith perspective. So the research says that there's a lot of benefits to it, and there's a lot of negatives if you don't practice self-compassion. So, and I wanted to say that, like anything that we learn, anything we want to share with our clients, it's hard to share something you don't do yourself. So it's really important, you know, whether you decide to share that with clients or not, to treat yourself in that way. And then what will happen is in your sessions, it just kind of comes out of you naturally, because that's how you treat yourself. That's how you think about, you know, people making mistakes and all that. And when you treat yourself that way, it just kind of flows out. So that's cool. So what the research has said is that the benefits are that people who practice self-compassion are much better at emotional resiliency, which is really important. Life is really hard, and we're always having to adjust to things. And nothing is ever, like Laura said earlier, nothing's ever the way you thought. In fact, not only is it not the way you thought, it's actually opposite of the way you thought, right? It does increase self-worth, but it's not based on comparing yourself to someone else. It's based on, feeling better about yourself because you're able to handle, well, yeah, I do make mistakes, but like, I'm still a worthwhile person. So, it increases self-worth from that vantage, not from comparing. It helps you with stress reduction. People who practice self-compassion in general are more content, and they have healthier relationships. And so on the opposite, what the research found is that people who are not compassionate with themselves, who are actually more critical with themselves, actually are very vulnerable to the opinions of others. So, you feel hijacked by this person thinks this about me, or they don't think this about me, or they did this, or they didn't do that. And you get your welfare is at the mercy of other people. So codependency, which would be much higher, because there's nobody inside that's fighting for you, right? And so you're looking for your affirmation, your validation, your worth from the external, which makes you a complete, bouncing ball in the hands of another person. And so people who have difficulty with self-compassion also find it difficult to let go of mistakes. You stay stuck on them, right? Ruminating about them because you can't let it go. Whereas if you're able to approach yourself with compassion, it's much easier to both accept the grace and the truth about whatever happened and actually process it through in order to let it go. And also being able to recover from painful experiences which is a lot of life. So self-compassion just really helps you live a healthier life, helps you have better relationships, helps you feel more content inside, all of that. So it's actually very important. Lack of self-compassion is actually related to, and this all makes sense to you, but it's linked to depression and anxiety. Some of the things I already said, low self-esteem, lack of resilience, inability to forgive oneself. You hear that all the time in our office, right? Is, I can forgive somebody else, but I just can't forgive myself. Which would kind of make sense, right? If you don't have compassion for, yes, I did this thing that I regret. I regret. I still feel bad about it. But if you can't forgive yourself for it, you will be stuck in it forever, really. So really, really important. And when we make mistakes, when we sin, which everybody does multiple times a day, it's hard enough to go through those situations, but even harder if you can't let it go and you're like berating yourself for it. It's like the horrible gift that keeps giving. It's just like it's going, and like that's not good. Okay. So, and the other thing, and this is one of the questions that I got a lot, was sort of like, isn't self-compassion, isn't it selfish, And actually the research says self-compassion actually helps your relationships. When you're not self-compassionate, your relationships suffer because you're always looking to that other person to have the right reaction, for your kids to be grateful, for your friends to, whatever that is, for your spouse, for your boss, to do all these things, and it actually causes a lot of tension in your relationships because we're looking for them to be able to meet a need because we don't have that friend on the inside. So it actually helps relationships. So, part of what I talk about in the book is integrating self-compassion with our faith, and also, where it comes from. It comes from God, God's compassion to us, okay? The way He sees us. Now, as I started to prepare, and I knew I only had an hour, I need to be realistic, and so what I have down, I'm just going to read this, is during these radio interviews, these are all the questions I would get, okay? Is it biblical? Isn't self-compassion selfish? Isn't it just feeling sorry for yourself? If you're compassionate for yourself, isn't that just permission to stay where you are, just do what you want? Aren't we supposed to just die to ourselves and deny ourselves? And so I've decided, number one, I couldn't handle that all here, but I'm actually writing an article with the help of my incredibly smart husband. I will run it by him first to make sure actually what I'm saying is right biblically. And so if you'd like to get a copy of that, is that going around there's an email list. Oh, is it over there?
With the Kleenex.
With the Kleenex. If you could send it around, it probably would be easier. If you want to get a copy of that, I'll send that to you. And If you don't, it's fine. But that way, I was trying hard to get it done. I was like, you know what? I don't want to give a half version. I want to spend the time to get it right. So if you'd like it, I can handle that. But I did want to comment, because I was looking at that list myself as I was typing it, and I thought, okay, what is the commonality of all that? Does anybody have an idea? It's kind of not fair to ask you because I've had time to think about it, but there's a commonality to all those questions. Does anybody have an idea about that?
That really shows a lack of self-compassion.
Yeah, definitely. Not being connected. Yeah.
I kind of see that, like, maybe not trusting God, or a misunderstanding of God,
Definitely. That comes up a
and
lot.
kind of a codependent view of,
Yeah.
I've got to be completely empty to help other people.
Right, yeah,
I've got to
there's-
run myself into the ground.
Yeah, like there's not supposed to be a me somehow or something, yeah. The other thing, and I think those are both, I didn't think of those, so thanks for saying those. The thing that I noticed is they're all splitting. All of them are splitting, which, is putting things into good and bad. All of them are. So, if you're self-compassionate, then you're selfish, right? If you're, supposed to take care of yourself, then I guess you're, ignoring others. If you forgive yourself, then you're just going to go crazy. It's like, what? And so it's like people have difficulty having both together at the same time. And that's what really the power of self-compassion is that you can have both. You don't have to split and do good or bad. And so, and I heard that a lot on some of these. If you listen to some of them, they're very interesting. The questions that I would answer, one in particular, a person that was interviewing me was asking, and I just said, well, help me understand, why can't we have both? And he was like, he couldn't answer it. Like, why couldn't it be both? I don't understand. And so, but that's what makes me so excited. It's like, oh my gosh, I get to share this. So it's really cool. So, as I talk about the integration with our spiritual life, is that, of course, the basis of extending love and compassion and worth to ourselves, of course, comes out of God's love, His worth, His value of us. It comes out of His forgiveness of us. It comes out of the fact that He's got no problem with the facts that we're crackpots in a mixed bag. Like, He's like, yeah, I know. And so that's where it all comes from. And the reality is, and I like this kind of way of saying it because I think it's true, and it's like, oh yeah, is we're all human beings who are wonderfully made by God and valuable, yet who are imperfect and make mistakes. Okay, that's how you put them together. We're each created by God as a precious and worthwhile person, and we deserve kindness, care, empathy, understanding, and comfort. This is how God feels toward us. And this is how He wants us to interact with ourselves. And there's several parts, and I only provided one part here, but in the book I talk about, and I'm going to read the bigger section right now, but I talk about kind of the biblical basis for it. And I'll read this part and I'll just mention the others. So you only have the last verse on your handout, but I'm going to read the whole section. So, and this, as I was reading, I was like, what about that? So Mark 12, 28 to 31. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, of all the commandments, which is the most important? The most important one, answered Jesus, is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. He doesn't split, by the way. God doesn't do splitting. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all of your strength. The second is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. So a couple things, that I noticed is, love your neighbor as yourself. So I was thinking, okay, no, wait a minute. So if we really love our neighbors, we love ourselves. We'll be bitter, unforgiving. We'll beat ourselves up for things. We'll never we'll remind ourselves. We'll bring it up at the worst time. It's like, well, I'm pretty sure that that's actually not what he meant. And so I actually go through the book and I talk about a major section of scripture where he talks about, hey, this is how you're supposed to love your neighbor. And And so then I go through there and talk about, okay, well, that must be how we're supposed to interact with ourselves, all right? And then also I thought the fruits of the Spirit, what would our life be like if we applied those to ourselves? If we treated ourselves with the fruit of the Spirit, life would be completely different, right? And so that was kind of what got me thinking. The other thing was that I noticed that the teachers of the law came to him and they said, what is the most important commandment? He gave 2. He didn't have to give the second one. He could have just answered their question, but he didn't. He gave the second one because it was so important. And so, you know, a lot of this, of course, is based on scripture, and there's more in there. But the thing I wanted to ask, and I'm just gonna call this out and see if you have ideas. And I meant to ask someone, Katie, would you be willing to write down and answer things people say, because I want to remember them. So the question is this. So as you think about working with people, even as you think about yourself, okay, you going through a difficult situation, what do you think are the spiritual truths that clients tend to forget when they're working through issues? What are the spiritual things they forget, right? They're in the middle of this, they're feeling the pain, the suffering, regret, their life is different than they thought, they're having troubles in all different ways, they're dealing with maybe depression, anxiety, you know, name it, okay? What are the things they forget spiritually? So anybody just call it out?
That they were made in God's image.
That they're made in God's image, yes.
That God says, I will never leave you nor forsake you.
Yes, God says, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Linda?
That they're being redeemed and restored in wholeness.
They're being redeemed and restored in wholeness, and I would add to that, and that's a process, right? It's not like boom, boom, it's like, no, you know, and hopefully like in heaven, okay, be done, right? Yes.
All relationships are co-created, and it reduces the elements of blame.
Good. So relationships are co-created, reduces the element of blame, which means we each have our part, right? And so sometimes when we're working through things, we'll put way more blame on ourselves. Sometimes we'll put way more blame on the other person, but to realize that there's responsibility all the way around, okay? Not just one person. And sometimes we might be blaming it all on ourselves. Thanks. Yes.
Yeah, God is gentle and humble.
Yes, God is gentle and humble. Yes. That he looks at these things we're revealing and he's like gentle and humble and kind. And his heart breaks for what we're going through. He's not up there like with the club, okay? What else do they forget spiritually?
That it gives us a great cloud of witnesses, so it gives us each other.
Yes, he gives us each other to encourage ourselves and to have like another viewpoint, right? Because when we get locked in our own, I mean, it happens to everybody, like you just can't see those other things, right? So he's given us others to help. Yes?
That he already knows whatever it is that we're feeling badly about or beating ourselves up for. He already knows it and loves us anyway.
Exactly. That's a huge one. He already knows it and loves us anyway. People forget that. Like, I can't really tell God, like, okay, that's an issue that's already taken care of. Like, he already knows. But he's not looking down at you. Yes?
I think that God himself, Jesus, he actually experienced the things that we experience,
Yes.
the rejection, the betrayal,
Yes.
the abandonment.
Yes, so Jesus has experienced what we're going through, rejection, abandonment, betrayal. And so, what was that last?
He can identify.
He can totally identify. So when we share, he's like, oh, I know what that's like. Oh, yes. And he knows even more than we know what that's like. Whatever we've gone through, he knows even more. Yes?
We forget sometimes that we're never alone and we're not the only ones having gone through it.
Yes, we're not alone. We're not the only ones having gone through it. Absolutely. So these are, go ahead.
He is very patient with us, and he knows the deep, deep parts of us that we don't even know.
Yes.
And he knows what our pace or our rate of growth is.
Yeah, that's good. So he's patient. He knows us within. He knows our rate of growth might be different from someone else's. We do not all come into these things, to therapy, to healing in the same place. We all come in a different place, okay? Both experiences, both our temperament, both our wiring, both our support. I mean, not anything is the same. And actually, that's one of the things I love about counseling is, you work with somebody who's depressed. It's completely different from the other 40 people you've worked with. Like each person is an individual. And so he knows us, and of course that's our challenge as a therapist, is to know each person individually. Those are great, thank you. The reason I asked is that that's part of the self-compassion, that's part of what you're going to help clients with, is to gently point that out so that they can get that other perspective. And you may already do that, for sure. The piece that I would add is that if they can then sort of talk to themselves about that, not just that you talk to them about that, which is super important, but that they can start saying those things to themselves, it starts healing that divide on the inside. Super important. Okay, so I want to explain, I'm on 5 now, just using self-compassion with clients to integrate differing or conflicting aspects of themselves, which then reduces shame about the imperfections, about the problems, okay? So the way that I look at self-compassion is that it's actually a healing mechanism to get yourself back after being hurt in life, which is inevitable, okay? There's no way to get around that, like big time, okay? So what happens is just a normal process, and especially if the hurt has come as a child, which almost all of it, a huge portion has. We have these little child minds that can't understand things. They can't understand everything. And so that we see what's happened in this child mind that doesn't have someone probably to explain that all the time. So what will happen is when we're hurt or harmed, what happens is a separateness developed on the inside where a part of us blames the other part, either what happened, what didn't happen, what should have happened, fill in all the blanks, right? Even what people told you that was your fault. Like, seriously? But a little kid can't process that. They won't be able to handle that, to know that even. And so what happens is that's where the divide happens, where a part of us is beating up the rest of us. And it begins like a lifetime of a civil war happening on the inside, constantly, never gets resolved, okay? And I actually see really self-compassion it's like sacred work, because just as we need to be restored to God, I believe we need to be restored on the inside with ourselves, and I just don't think you really hear people talk about it that way. And he wants the separateness inside of us to be healed. And so, for some reason, people sign on all the time for being compassionate to others, but don't really think about it for themselves. So, self-compassion is partly to pause and look back at what you've been through and to look at it with different eyes of understanding and the bigger picture. Because even in the best of families, there's no way to avoid things happening. It's not possible. Because we live in a fallen world, a totally messed up world. There's no way to avoid that. And so it's important for clients to understand both maybe what has happened as well as what they're going through now in a greater way with compassion for themselves. And but they need our help to do that, okay? So I have another question for you that I'm going to integrate as I'm doing the role plays is, so we talked about what are the things they miss spiritually. So I'm going to ask, and this is probably an overlap, but what fuller picture do clients tend to not see as they're working through painful and difficult situations? So it could be that you gave an answer that applies here as well, but is there anything else that comes to you that they don't tend to see the bigger picture, the fuller picture, as they're doing their work? Anything else that you thought of? Yes.
That stress or that crisis they're going through isn't the total of who they are. It's just something they're experiencing and walking through there.
That's great. So it isn't the total of who they are. It's that piece they're walking through. All the tension is on it. All the feelings are on it, right? But it's a portion of who they are. Thank you. Any other ones you pick up? I don't see the fuller picture. Yes, John.
I think it's Ephesians 1 that we've been in God's compassion since the foundation of the earth. We've never been outside of it.
That's good.
So our restoration is not something we're working towards, but in our Father's eyes we already are.
Wow.
And then we get to live that. We're living towards something that's already real.
That's already happened.
Yeah.
Okay. So God's compassion for us from the foundations of the earth, and that restoration with him actually has positionally already happened, and that we're working toward it in our lives, but it's not it's something that's actually already occurred, and God is solid in that with us. I appreciate that. Thank you.
And also that God calls Satan the accuser of the brethren.
Yes, absolutely.
For that whole process of condemning yourself and the restoration that you are in.
Right, of questioning that, of bringing up all those accusations, for sure. Thank you.
I think we simply sometimes have to, and I tell my clients, we have to accept that truth, that we are not the sum total, as you said, of what has happened. And that the feelings that we have right now, if we allow it, and if we accept God's true compassion, that He will help move us along beyond those feelings.
Yeah, that's good. And to challenge to accept it. And sometimes I'll say to people is, could you just consider that? Like, you don't even have to accept it. Like, could you just consider the possibility? And then so even if they can't do that, you just keep moving backwards until they can, and so would you consider that somebody thinks that? Oh yeah, I could consider that. Okay. And would you consider potentially 10% of you might eventually? I could do that. You just go with whatever you got, right? And then it moves it along. Good. Well, let me add, I'm going to add a couple others, and then I want to get to the role play. So I would say another one is that I don't think that when people are in the midst of working through pain, that they realize how far they've come. Right? They very much see and experience, oh my gosh, I'm still dealing with this. Well, yeah, you're right now once a week, but it used to be 3 times a day. People don't often realize, my gosh, you've come so far, and that's really important for us to be able to show, on the one hand, I really understand that. On the other hand, well, this is what I see, and also how worn out they are and how hard this process is on them. I think we often think we should have superhuman strength and it shouldn't affect us, and we're adding this huge thing in and somehow we should be able to do everything else. It's okay, that's literally crazy, because you can't add some huge thing in and still function at the same level. That's not possible. And anybody who is dealing with this would struggle. Anybody with these factors would struggle. And also I would say the good that they're doing, the part that's working. Okay, yeah, sure, this is a struggle, but all of this over here is also true, right? And then I would just say courage and bravery. Gosh, to do therapy, especially long term, to do deep work, that's got to be some of the most courageous thing in the world. And that's why people, that's one of the reasons people don't do it. There's a lot of other reasons people aren't able to, financially, whatever. But it's courageous to go in there and look at all that stuff. Oof, who wants to do that? Well, you do. If you want to have a different life, you do. But it is a lot of courage. So those are all the things that, to me, that we can help people, even with, yes, you're going through this awful thing that you feel bad about, and also. All right? So I'm saying this maybe in different terms, but you guys have talked about it, is part of the kindness to ourselves is seeing the multiple and often complicated layers that are occurring in most situations, okay? It's not just one thing. People will think, well, it's just this. It's okay, well, this was 10 things. It's not simple or easy, or, and again, we all have the tendency to split, to go into black and white thinking. So this is a tool I use, and actually I always feel just sort of silly saying it because it sounds so simple, but it works like a charm, okay? And really, I just can't, I didn't design it, it's just I kept saying it. I'm oh my gosh, I keep saying that all the time. And so what I say is, I'll validate, on the one hand, I really hear that you wish that you had done a better job at work, or I really hear that, you wish you had more time for your kids, or I wish, that you wanted to be out with your friends more, you wanted to form some new relationships, and you feel really bad about that, and you're blaming yourself for it. On the other hand, what I also hear is, you're doing this and this and this, and this also is happening. And it just, you can kind of see people, they just kind of relax a little, because they got the on the one hand part down, they don't got the on the other hand part, okay? And so that's one of the ways, it's like a balanced way of relating to ourselves. And so I'm gonna have Laura come up, and we're gonna select you. And I'm gonna just, in the moment, kind of do what I normally do with that. And we'll see how it goes.
what's funny about this role play, Kim sent me a role play from her book and said, would you be willing to do this? And I said, well, it really hits close to home. Would you mind if I make it a little more personal? Because I thought, hey, free therapy, all right. So she was gracious enough to allow me to adjust it a little bit. So Peter, could you just make sure that these chairs are in line with your view?
Yep, they're good.
Okay.
Bring my card with me.
Okay.
I have a love-hate relationship with this thing. Okay, thank you, Betty. That's good. And I do want to explain one thing. I often use, these are EMDR tappers. We're not doing EMDR, don't worry. Don't worry, we're not doing that, okay? And I'm going to demonstrate two different things also with Katie. But I use these sometimes in soothing things, and so I'm going to see if that'd be okay with you if we do that, just to try that. I'm going to do a different way with Katie. You also don't have to do any kind of bilateral stimulation, which is like left, right, back and forth, while you're making your brain communicate with each other to help both speed up and connect what you're working on. It's not necessary at all, but I wanted to demonstrate it for those of you who might want to try that or whatever. So I'm going to actually ask you if you would do it. I'm going to ask you, could you please do it, just so that they can see. Okay. And so this is, okay, so as we go in, we're kind of, we've been talking a long time. We know each other. We're just doing the littlest snippet here, okay? All right, okay, so, first of all, in genuine, thank you for doing this. I really appreciate you're very brave. So, yeah, so just tell me a little bit about all the stresses that you've been feeling and how I might be able to help a little bit, like fuller picture.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I love about my job here at Western is the flexibility. But I have found this summer I'm turning myself into a pretzel, and I'm so the balance of maintaining this well when I'm looking to squeeze in hours late at night or work from home or come here but come here less often. So being present with everyone, giving the students my full attention. But then also my baby's turning 8, so I'm very conscious of that time's flying by, and I still have this crazy notion that I'm a full-time stay-at-home mom. So trying to make the most of summer, make the most of our moments, be with them, have something available for my husband, and then summer is a pause for many things that I have a deep love for and feel like God is asking me to use my skills in these areas. So as we head into the fall, it's that mix of grieving that they're going back to school and where did the time go, and we're heading into our last year of elementary for my oldest, but then also rejoicing that I'll have more of a normal work schedule, but then also looking at how do I fit in the speaking and the writing and some of the ministry work that I feel called to, and then looking at should I return finishing up my licensing exams, and should I return to practicing therapy? I've been toying with a PhD program. How do all these things fit together? So I find that I'm pulled between this place of wanting to make the most of the moments before my kids leave for college, which is crazy to think when they're so little. But I'm surrounded by all these people who, time's passing and soak it up. But then also being conscious of the only thing we can count on is getting older, and there are all these deep dreams, and how do I continue pressing forward with that while being present and available for my family, and then, hey, maybe let's do some more creative meals in the midst of all of it. So
don't forget about that. Oh my goodness, I'm really kind of tired. Just oh, I bet you are too. What's your internal dialogue with yourself about that?
That's a good question. I think Well, I've been under your tutelage, so I'm pretty good about dismissing the judgment voice, although I still find, well, with work with developing the Center for Women, I'm encountering some fear with that, which surprises me, and I hate admitting fear. So I'm struggling a bit with that voice as it comes up and identifying what God's speaking over and what might be more of an enemy or critical voice. And then well, I think honestly a lot of times I just get into go mode and I'm not paying too much attention. Than, so the mix of voices in the head tend to be representing these different parts, these different passions and dreams. And so then it's this, when I think when you were talking about the Civil War, it's like the war of, pay attention to me, I should be the top. And so then going, I don't know, they're all good. I don't know which one
that's the problem.
Yeah,
The
so
problem
I
is
think
they're
that
all
comes
good.
up more. Yeah.
And I can relate because I function very much like that in the past because there's so many wonderful opportunities, right? And you have such a heart for people, and you have a heart for growth, and you have a heart for your children and your husband and your family, and you love what you do. You love what you do. And so that's like a blessing and a little bit of a curse at the same time, in the sense that there's so many options. So, like, I don't hear you being real down on yourself, but what I hear is that there's so many things that are all up for grabs that you're really, really stressed.
I think when I connect, when I slow down enough to, the more critical tends to come on the parenting side.
Okay.
Can I get an amen on the right? That's how it goes. Being at, especially with my oldest, who's always been so easy, and heading into those pre-adolescent years, which seem to start at 5 now.
I know.
So turning 11 soon, and she's taking on this persona that I don't know, and feeling like I'm not. So I think the critical voice on the mother side tends to be, I should be more. It's the shoulds.
Okay.
I should be more on top of this. I should be implementing. I should be doing more of those discipleship exercises with them. I should be engaging with her more on these things that are going to come up with her friends, and so the list of shoulds come in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say something that could I'm touched.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. It's group therapy all over again.
I guess I just would say to that part of you that has all the shoulds.
Yeah. It's a long list.
It's a long list. Like, would it be okay to let that part off the hook a little?
No.
Why don't you consider that? I mean, seriously, like they're all really good and they're all important. Like every single bit you're saying makes sense to me. You can't function that way. You can't do all of that. So on the one hand, I hear how good all of that is, and I would give a talk myself on these are the things to do with your children. And the other hand, I would say God has gifted you in so many ways that you also feel led in. And like maybe it's okay to, even if you wrote them all down and just said, you have to figure out what's good for you, but like, I'm going to let some of these go now. And not forever, I'm just going to put them to the side. And like, what are the ones that really would matter in my relationship, like especially with my children. And like, you know, the should parts, and see, I see them coming from a good place, I really do. No, I do, I don't see that as abusive or anything, I see that as, they're all good, but you're only one person. And so just to see if you would consider allowing just some of those to fade a little, and then have the ones at the forefront be the ones that truly matter to your heart. Not to like what you think a person should do, but what is my heart saying? Well, my heart is saying, you know, you don't have to say, well, like, you're going to consider it. My heart is saying, if I'm going to put any time, I think I'll put it wherever that is. But more importantly with yourself is like, I think about, is there compassion for you, for yourself in, I mean, I'll just be blunt, in being a multi-talented person who couldn't possibly do everything.
No, I'm too busy thinking about what I have yet to do.
Yeah.
I felt myself calm when you gave that visual.
Okay.
I think the voices have been functioning like a lazy Susan.
Okay.
And so each day or each moment it's, okay, spin it, I'll pick this and focus on this. When
Yeah.
you and I think my prayers have been similar to that. God, which one?
Yeah.
But it's so busy spinning.
Right, you can't even.
And I felt myself slow down when you talked about writing it down.
Okay.
And I pictured that as like laying that at the altar. It felt
Okay.
more,
Okay.
it felt calmer,
Good.
like an act of surrender rather than a frantic,
Yes.
which one?
Kind of make the right decision.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad, and how cool that you could just feel that inside. And like, to me, for number one, the best part of that is that that connected with you, like that made sense to you. You could feel that. And so just the kindness to yourself would be to do that soon.
I think the other part I'm conscious of the fact that I'm so quick to move past the kind words you said. And I think, I mean, even with Bev forced me to go celebrate passing my licensing exam. And it, you know, I'm so it's like this because I get hung up on time is passing and we've got to keep moving and what stuck for some reason in this moment is it might be easier for me to pause if I'm looking at, let's take a moment to celebrate. God, thank you for helping me with this, or thank you for this gift or this accomplishment. It feels less like, hey, let's talk about me,
about
you know, and more like just, wow, let's celebrate that.
And if you look back and you say, oh my gosh, how many years has that been? How has he taken you through it? You know, when you came up, we were talking about when you first met me, you were like so pregnant. I was afraid she was going to have the baby in the class. Right? But I mean, if you think about it, and then the second class you had with me, you were very pregnant again. And like, to think of all that you've done to get there, and God, right?
That might explain why I was crying all the time now that I think about it more.
Now we know.
Now we know.
I'm so glad that, you know, just on your own, that just came to, that's a way I could celebrate too. That isn't about focusing on me, but focusing on how God has worked with you and through you. And I would add, and how you have allowed for at the same time.
Oh, you're good.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. So I would just, you know, that you would be so vulnerable to share, and what you're sharing, I would guess most people in this room could relate to. And so, you know, what you've been willing to share is helping everybody. I hope that what we talked about will help. And we didn't use these because we didn't need to. We didn't need to.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can pull something
No,
else up.
no,
if
no,
you-
no, no.
Okay.
We're not adding one more
Okay.
thing. Thank you. So that's certainly an example of just staying with the person and where they're at and trying to uncover where is the self-criticism, and then, as the Holy Spirit leads you and as the things you're hearing, to try to help, to intervene and to bring the bigger perspective and maybe a different way that would be helpful. So I'm very conscious of the time. So I'm going to move to the next one, just a sec, Katie, because I want to give the intro. The other way that I use self-compassion, and it's not just self-compassion, but that's part of it, is all of us have experienced that you have been working with somebody, and because they've been doing very good work, because they worked very hard, they've gotten a deep emotion, that they're very stressed, they're kind of unsettled, they're agitated at the end of the session, and to the best of our ability, we need to help them leave in an okay way, all right? Not a perfect way, but a stable enough way, make sure they are okay driving, make sure that I would say also that they have some positives to say to themselves. I mean, not just that they're okay physiologically, but that they can encourage themselves. So, again, most everything that I've ever learned, it just kind of happens, you just pay attention to what's happening, ask God for help, and He helps you. So I'm just going to go over the basic things I do, and then Katie's going to come up and I'm just going to demonstrate that. So now you're going to tailor this to your client, and honestly, I actually wrote the little steps on my card so I could refer to them so I don't mess you up and confuse you if I change completely, because that's what we do, right? Is we go, okay, this is my idea, but okay, this is what this person needs. Not my idea is great, right? But what do they need? So this is the general, and it was actually a little bit harder to get into words than I thought, because I just do it automatically all the time. I'm like, what do I do? I don't know what I do. And then I'm like, okay, I think this is what I do. All right, so when we come up and Katie comes up, we're going to have the background, and we just had a very exhausting emotional session, okay? And maybe it's 10 or 15 minutes before the end of the session, and I say, I acknowledge what a hard session it's been, and I ask how she's doing. And I'm constantly praying, God, help me know what to do, help me know what she needs, all of that. And then validating how normal it is to be so worn out. It's a sign that you worked hard, actually. And then I usually will say, would it be okay with you to close your eyes and rest while I say comforting and encouraging things? And you don't actually have to do anything. I'm going to be doing it. And then I do the bilateral tapping. So I'm going to tell Katie about 2 different ways that are not the tappers that I use it, and then she can pick one. Now, if a person says no, I don't want to do that. Maybe that's too scary to them. If they don't want to close their eyes, they don't close their eyes. They could look somewhere else. Or if they just don't want to do it, that's actually fine. And if they say no, then I would just say, well, what are some things you can do to help yourself feel grounded and all that. And sometimes if a person is not kind of coming around, I did this like in a state of desperation, like years ago. I was really worried about somebody who was leaving, and I just said to them, okay, I'm going to actually talk about surfacey things right now, and I'm not meaning to be, this is not that I don't care, and it's not at all that I am not, that I care about what dress you're wearing to the wedding, but I want you to get grounded. And I explained to them why I'm doing it. And they go, okay. So I said, okay, so when is the wedding? And what are you going to wear? And as they happen to start use their mind, they kind of come down and they can, and I ask about, and I don't ask anything like, okay, and how will you feel when your cousin's all, you don't do any of that. You say, what time do you have to get there? I mean, you're just using intellectual things so that part of their mind engages and they get grounded. So if a person doesn't want to do it, that's what I do. But for this purpose, I'm going to have Katie do it. And then I just talk soothingly, and I interweave grace and truth and understanding. I interweave, what I've seen about the hard work the person's done. I try to bring in the bigger picture, whatever comes to me. And then at the end, I say, if you'd like to say something encouraging to yourself, silently. They're not sharing that with me. They don't have to say that out loud. If there's something you could do to encourage yourself, say that. now. And then when you feel like it's about the right time, you can open your eyes. So that they tell me when to open their eyes. Like, I don't know, I can't read the line. And so, and then afterwards, and sometimes, most of the time people do, but sometimes they don't, and that's fine. And then if at the end I ask how they're doing now, and if there's anything they want to share, they can share or not. It's really up to whatever they need. And it's not foolproof, but it works almost all of the time because we have to have a way to make sure that they're okay when they leave. And so a lot of the things I say are compassionate and self-compassionate. And so it's cool because they also have an experience of hearing those words that they can hopefully then start saying to themselves. Okay, so Katie, if you can come up, really appreciate it. Thank you again for being willing to do it. I really appreciate it. So we're going to start with, you've worked really, really hard today. I know it's been hard. I know you felt a lot of emotion and probably even talked about some things that were even harder than you thought. And I just want to make sure that you're okay. So I want to just see if you could just tell me kind of how you're feeling right now.
I'm exhausted.
Okay, you're exhausted.
And I'm shaky.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really sad.
Oh, yeah. And I know from what we've talked about that, of course you would be. Of course you would be. And all that you're feeling, and this might feel, I always feel weird saying it because I'm trying to encourage you, but part of you are like, yeah, thanks. But it's just like, because of the hard work you've done, that's why you're feeling what you're feeling. It's not because of anything wrong with you or anything weak about you. It's because you worked really hard. You went to a deep place, not a surface place. And that is exhausting. There's a kind of exhaustion that happens that isn't even describable in other ways when you go to a deep place.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So what I was wondering is, you're exhausted. I don't want to ask you to do anything else, of course. Yes. Would it be okay with you if I had you close your eyes? Is that an okay thing to do?
Yeah.
And honestly, I just want to say comforting and soothing things to you that I believe to be true. And it's nothing you have to respond to. You don't have to talk to me about it or anything. And then then I'll just kind of check and see how you're doing after that. Okay. Now, one of the things that helps, and you certainly don't have to do this, but some people find it helpful, is that we found that we call bilateral stimulation, which is just, I'll show you, there's two ways, which is just tapping the left and right side of your body, actually helps your brain to communicate and is soothing. And you decide how fast or slow you do it. That's one way. Another way, some people don't like that and they'd rather tap their knees or even the side of their knees. And you do it at a very slow pace, not fast. And it's a way that kind of helps your brain take in the soothing and actually physiologically helps calm you. Okay. And would you be open to doing that?
Yeah, I think I'll try this one.
Okay. Great. And just for a sec, just see what feels soothing. Like what is a good pace? Okay. Is that okay like that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm going to just keep doing that as much as you want, and I'm just going to talk to you. And so what I would say is that I know you're exhausted. I know that you're shaky. And I know that underneath all of that is a deep sadness. And that makes sense to me from what you shared. And I want you to know I'm actually incredibly proud of the incredible work you're doing. That is very hard work to do. And I know today it probably feels like that's actually not even a good thing, because how could this be good because you feel so bad? And at the same time, I would tell you that the growth that you're doing is actually changing. It's changing how you live your life and how you experience your life, and it's actually cleaning out some things in order to make room for other good things. And I know probably it doesn't even feel that way and you can just take it or not, but I'm just letting you know that I've seen you work over time on really hard things, and I've seen those make a big difference. I know there's things that that we've talked about before that you don't even struggle with anymore because of all your hard work. And I want you to know that while there is definitely sadness, I know that there's also other things that, as the sadness clears out over time, there's also other good things that you've talked to me about too. And there's a depth in you and a courage in you that I know is helping you through this time. And even though it's hard to imagine that you won't feel exactly this way forever, I will tell you that that's true. That it's clearing out of your system. It's making room for other good things. And as you listen to my words, if there's a way for you to take in some compassion for yourself, things like, and you don't only take in the ones that fit you, like this is really hard. This is really hard work. I am really brave. I don't know many people that are working on themselves like I am. I do have a strength in me that maybe I don't feel right now because I'm so sad, but I know that's true. And I think I'll try to be kind to myself. I'll think about and just kind of notice what things would soothe me, what things would bring me comfort. Do I need to rest? You'll pick out the ones of those that fit you. And I know that those will come to you. And I also know, with your strong faith in God, that He is holding you right now. He is actually weeping with you. He feels for you and all you're going through. He is right with you, just like I am. And this is something you're not going to have to go through by yourself. And then I would say that if there's anything that comes to you right now that you would like to encourage yourself about, if you could just say that to yourself, you don't have to say it out loud. It's just for you and you. And then when you're kind of done, you can open your eyes, but we have time, so take your time. So, I was wondering, like not in the role play, but just because you experienced it, like whatever amount or not, if you want to share, what was that like for you?
So not in the role play.
Well, if that's okay.
Yeah, it is okay. So I would have, if I would have let myself get in the role play more, I would have had tears just flowing.
Okay.
But I felt very understood, and that brings a peace. And that's what would have made me, as soon as I thought, she knows, I would have been just weeping.
Okay.
Also, I would feel myself just kind of smile a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like certain things that fit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely. And one of the thoughts was that God loves me very, very much.
Mm-hmm.
So it connected me to
Yes.
God also. All that compassion connected me to God.
Mm-hmm.
So just some peace and even a little bit of happiness. Not just joy, but like,
a little bit.
I'm going to be okay. And lots of hope.
Don't we need to know that?
Yeah.
I'm going to be okay. Oh.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, and I want to just compliment you. The thing that you, I mean, it was very rare of you to come do this, but I loved how you were able to monitor how much I'm going to let that in. I'm in a public place. This is being filmed. Like you had sort of two things going on. Like I'm hearing it, I'm going with it. I could tell that if I really went there, this would happen. But you know what? I'm actually not going to do that because this is where I am. That is beautiful. That was compassionate. Seriously. Like honestly with yourself. Like you're like, I'm not going to put myself in a too risky of a situation. Well, I really appreciate that.
Thank you for noticing.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. All right, thank you, Katie. So, what I want to do now is just open and like, what was that like for you guys to even hear or feel, or, of course, questions I would love to answer if I could. Yes.
I have several going on in my head. At the end of sessions, if they're believers, I usually pray for them, so it's kind of like that. But I'm definitely not asking them to tap or anything. So would that be something that I could incorporate, or would that be weird talking to God and praying for them?
I would ask them, would they want to try it and just see if for them it's helpful? I think that praying for them is wonderful. I think if you could add in, like even, and could they even pray for themselves? Like they don't have to do that loud, but like just to add in that as you're hearing me pray for you, is there something that you want to ask God, or is there something that you feel God's saying to you? Like just to encourage that it's not just coming from outside in, but it needs to come in, you know. So I think that's a great adaptation of that. I really appreciate you saying that.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
How would that work for couples? Because they would each be having their own experience,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And so it would kind of look the same?
It could. I mean, you could do that with the other person sitting there, and then you could shift to them and say those same kind of things to, like, what fits them. I mean, that's, to me, that's the hallmark of, it's very hard, but the hallmark of good couples therapy is totally relating to where this person is and where this person is, and trying to not make anybody bad, but have grace and truth in there all together. And sometimes if, this person can hear you talk this way to them, you're like, huh, never thought of that. And then vice versa, like, I didn't see that. And so I think I would play around with it, like for the people that you know, and just see what works. I love that you're already thinking about, hey, maybe I could use it this way too.
Can I ask one more real quick?
You're cooking, yeah.
So once you've been doing this ongoing, do you ask permission each time?
I do.
And do most people continue to know it's safe and
Yes.
keep saying yes, but you ask?
I always do.
Thank you.
Yeah, because, and the reason I just do it, I don't even just do it like, okay, I should ask permission. I do it as like, how do I know? I mean, like, I don't know what's happening in them. I mean, I have a pretty good idea, but like, I don't know. So I'm always asking because I could be wrong. Sure, yeah.
Kim, your voice is so nice and soft. I didn't get to hear the phrases, and I think many of us missed the phrases you said to her.
Yes.
And we could hear and see what was happening. It was very beautiful and soft. We could hear your tone. Can you just repeat some of the phrases you said to her?
No.
Or what you might say.
But here's what I would do. Okay. Part of, like, if you sign up for the email thing and I send you the article, I'll also send you, I mean, I have to go home and think about it. Like, I wouldn't be able to just say it now, but I would be happy to. I would be happy. I mean, I'm sure I could go back in my mind and I'd be happy to write all that down and send it to you. Yeah, and I do that. My voice does get very soft. Every time I would teach and do this, as soon as we can't hear, like, well, I am not going to shout, and I'm sorry, I can't do that. So I do that all the time, yeah.
I was just wondering the relationship between self-compassion and boundaries. There's obviously a lot of books and good information on setting good boundaries with yourself and with others and children and spouses and all that stuff. Do you touch on that a little bit in the book? Or?
I do. I talk a little bit about part of self-compassion often is setting a boundary with yourself. Like, I'm not going to do this to myself. I'm not going to put myself in this position. But then also, there's a whole section that I talk about where protection of yourself from harm is a very important part of self-compassion, and talk about the boundary stuff and actually use a little bit of, Dave has this whole thing, my husband has this great thing about how we are stewards of ourselves. And so I actually had a big footnote from him in there where he talked about that, because there's certain minor exceptions to that in scripture, but how that's so important. So yes, definitely. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, sure. The content of what you were sharing with the clients was epically important, but even more so from the first day I had you in a class, going back some time, what stands above everything else was your engagement, your compassion, your central nervous system, your heart, everything that the Lord has put in you, you're imputing that into the person that you're sitting with. And I think that's a gift. That's not something that's easily duplicated by those of us sitting in these chairs. But I do try. So it's
Thank
good
you. I
see
appreciate
you
that.
again.
And it just happens over time. I don't think that I was this way initially. I got better at really connecting and did my own work so I could connect. Initially, I think I was more surfacey because I didn't really want to be honest. And so just, I've done a lot of my own work, and so just over time, so I would say it just happens over time, and when you finally get it all, then you retire. And so. But thank you for that encouragement. And maybe just one more and then we'll close, because I want to keep what we said, so yes.
Can you use that ending of a session with clients that have DID?
Oh, I think so. Absolutely. I would probably say, and of course it would depend on the person, right? So you'd have to know, okay, well, these words do this to that person. Like, you'd have to know what you do. But I would probably use some global things too, of like, and I know for all the parts inside, and I know for all of you, and I know that that this is difficult for all, and all of you deserves compassion. Like I would, now if you had specific parts you wanted to refer to because you have a relationship in that way, obviously you would, yeah, I actually think so. I think it would calm the whole system, to be honest. I think it would calm the system.
Thanks, that's awesome.
Sure. So I'm going to be at the back, and a lot of you bought stuff already. You don't have to buy anything, of course, but if you want to unsign books, I'd be happy to. And I just wanted to tell you one thing that was back there too. Besides the book, I have a CD, and I always feel weird saying this, but if I explain why, then maybe you'll understand. So right before I got diagnosed with cancer and all that, I had done a self-published version of this book. This one's actually pretty different. It has a lot more in it, but and I'd done some speaking, and I would say all these self-compassionate things to people and ask them to close their eyes. And seriously, I had like 50 people either email me or come up to me saying, "Do you have this recorded?" I'm like, "No, I don't have this recorded." Well, after the 50th, it takes a while for God to know. I think I was like, oh, like the story of my life is I go, no, I don't want it. And then he keeps bugging me, and I go, all right. And so I did. I had a friend who had a recording studio. I booked time in this place. I recorded them. And so what they are is, it's not the book on CD, but it's a lot of these self-compassionate statements that are in the book that are read by me. And I get hundreds of these things. And the reason is that I think for some people, like it's kind of a neat combo of reading it, but then also hearing it. And for some people, it doesn't go in by reading, it goes in by hearing. And so I'm just explaining what that is. It's not the actual book on CD, it's just these statements.
I wanted to say that my clients love those. They put themselves to sleep listening to their CDs. Exactly, that's how they just absolutely love them. I've given all my copies away. So.
Yeah. And I wanted to say something funny about that, is that my voice, like, I mean, if you hear it over and over, whatever, and I've done lots of talks, and those are on CDs, but anyway, it's probably 10 years ago now, my husband and I were selling our house. And so somebody was coming to view the house, and I said, "Oh, hi, kind of welcome, come on in." She goes, "Are you Kim Fredrickson?" Yes. "Oh, I've been listening. We listen in the car." And I'm like, wow. Just a little interesting note. So anyway, thank you so much for all being here. It just does my heart so good, and I feel so encouraged to see all of you and to share with you. I hope that what I shared you will take to be your own, and you will use it with your clients and with yourself especially, and that it will be a blessing for you. So thank you so much for being here.